Vitaly, friends, I am Vitaly Port. Here's our oyster today. May will be highlighted with Persh. We can say that the Ukrainian and American delegation ended in Geneva in the Ney from the 23rd to the 24th attack. Rich still eyes. God respected prominent yak will be Ukrainian-American mutually. Overgrown, we can also say that the two sides are optimistic. And serious runaways and serious scandals on not disrespecting on overgrown and little understood. And the post of American President Donald Trump. I just went out yesterday to talk about the fact that the Ukrainian delegation managed to clean up the body of Nick Points. I'm serious about the triggers of the Ukrainian one. I'm a blackie of the American peace plan who showed up at the media. The intercessor of the Minister of Zakordnik Spravki of Ukraine, Sergei Kislitsa, says that he and the plan from the received states are no longer on that. I expressed myself on the cob. Even with the received Bilsha states, they do not impose 600,000 temples on the integrity limit of the dropped forces of Ukraine, but on one of the most critical points of the document for the Ukrainian side. Well, even the torture. I am the president's view from the United States and Ukraine. Now you can get it from an oyster in the White House. Territorial torture between NATO and Russia with the received states is not so much about it, but it is obvious that the presidents can discuss them. It is not yet planned to go to say like an oyster between the president of Ukraine from the received states. And we don't give up that valuable at the lowest moment. We are a constant with you. Trump was also elected with the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, until the day after the state election. Until Thursday's tag. And I have not yet received an allegedly approved document. Then Trump did not allow the senator to meet with the president of Ukraine. The fact that it is obvious that I would have understood the document and could have signed oysters with Zelensky in the White House. Torture. And I can really see that the signing of the document by Trump is not up to the Russian-Ukrainian guilt. The fact that Ukraine is not at war with the United States of America. Ukraine is fighting from Russia. The real prospect of a completed Russian-Ukrainian guilt between the President of the Russian Federation Vladimir Putin and the President of Ukraine Vladimir Zelensky has been filled in. Tilky those two politicians can talk about the completion of the Russian-Ukrainian guilt. All policies, including the President with Donald Trump's staff, can be turned off by Yaki will cut out the test to Ukraine from the protest of the Russian Federation, yet the position of Ukraine was exiled back in the Russian Federation in the sleep of guilt. Could not be with Ukraine until complete surrender to Russia. Why do I need a lawsuit against Russia? Why do I need to help Ukraine? And you're fine, of course, I'm still for Trump subscribes to the so please. And it will be possible to throw buckets to the fact that the prices of the agreement between the belligerents. Extremely with the receipt of the state, it can procure these for the sake of the Russian Federation. And the signifying Russian Federation will be on it vagu. I will still have items there that are not in the President of the Russian Federation and the political veto power. I will continue to decide and fight from Ukraine all the way to the state. And you will not be able to decide anywhere, of course, until the Russians have mats of groves, resources and people to continue the cruel and unjust guilt. Next. What does the pros of the Russian Federation think? The relatives of the President of Russia Yuri Ushakov, saying today the Russians have crushed the American plan. No. and their absolutely frantic European plan we have already talked about. And obviously, it is complicated by the fallen American approach to the rich realistic soap plans of Zagolina Kanu. But with a great understanding of the Ukrainian adoration of the fact that there is little for the wine, I still could have been floated in. That's exactly the wording. Here is the Ukrainian adoration of the zakonka of guilt, let's say, the Ukrainian Maria Protyak for wine. And the Proteus of wine does not have any points of zit between them. And the plan of the Europeans in the mirror of the Ukrainian-Russian propositions on the uploaded war. Mirror in the Russian-Ukrainian Ray Maya on the was savings of a sovereign Ukrainian democratic power. I have every right to choose in the Union. Before that, I can say more, but in treason before Trump's so-called plan. There, and it no longer portends that Ukraine is my reading in the Union. On the front itself is visible since we are, of course, about the Russian view of the Ukrainian powers, firm the political map of the retinue, and the arrival of the Kalishny regions of Ukraine to Russia in the brightness and subjects of the Federation. It is much easier to be added here by a single way out of the situation. I am the continuation of the war. Until we are identified by the non-surrendered aggression of operas. There was no allegedly way out of the Russian-Ukrainian guilt of Nikola, not Maya, and believe me, they will not. So our task is that we do not want Ukraine to have a retinue of political maps, and millions of Ukrainians were in sales, kicked out of prominent places, economic and demographic potential of the Russian Federation. I will order buckets to the skin, who has not yet like faces, to end the guilt of the sale of the 20s. But the 30s hands in it. And you can test the chances of Russia. In principle, the Ukrainian delegation succeeded so easily with this rank. Replaced the plan. I'm already an American on the cob. I've managed to show diplomatic skill here. The Trump administration's diplomatic anti-racism. I'm a one-time wife of a certain plan, and not Bulow. Not an official document, but an absolutely amateurish approach to Steve Withov's help by Jared Kushner. Especially about Trump. Realtors do not, of course, do anything in politics. And Trump's son-in-law. I went to the Shliakim. The lobby of the powerful business internet, you are in this political problem. It also comes down to the fact that PPR is in Ukraine. Well, it is extremely worthy of the head task firm the American president to continue to embroider each other and their problems on the businesses themselves. To this and the Shidney plan. The mayor's troubles began with Trump. And in the dark plan of some, we see as the American plan. The mayor's meetings began with Trump. And funny. And seriously. But Trump is a four-handed president. In the 2029 kind, go into the Oval Office and pretend to be an extraordinary pensioner. On these that I will namaga swim in, and there on the Republican Party, no one will be ticked there. Because everyone will know that our finished hymn at home will not turn. And that's what will happen. Well, you know, the Jewish people have come and gone before Trump, and Trump again, and will forget Trump. What the Israelis can experience about the mayor. Trump's cola, and I will be the president, with the money received in the state. The president-elect firm the state received in or in the Rada is running out. Chesh. The same thing from Ukraine. In Ukraine, here I will be glad to be the mayor until the 2029 rock. Trump retired and played golf with Mar-a-Lago, and at the same time, thereby success. I'm not a document reader. And I will be in the 29th lesson, in 2000. But you are the president of the received states, Osh Radu the mayor will say that Halamate. I'm glad to see the mayor. We can get our own here without your raw. Everything will turn out wildly. It's obvious that it's fitting for Trump. Well, and moreover, in such situations, you can swim into the American's mind even before that, which is eliminated on the Collar Plan. Why did the Americans on the truth so easily come to Zmen? To the fact that they beat up Yaka, they laid out in see all these crazy points of Vitev's boring. Kola and were published in the media. Obviously, with the filing of a special simpleton of the president of Russia, Kirill Dmitriev. And I thought that he had not yet managed to get on the sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil, then Hyven is like this. You will play with someone who has not been straightened out, my God. In fact, it was such a blow to the positions of the American powers. And Rubio, I obviously have both a plan and a fully understood fool. And also at Trump, and absolutely for the blame, because I think that for such a rank. I was just checking the delegation with the Ukrainian representatives, and everything with plans to take off all the wits. Allegedly floats into Trump's political reputation. On his power political reputation, I'm up to the Republicans to remove the candidates for the presidency from the received shta. Maybe it will be like this even before the moment of the presidential polygons, and Trump and J. Divens will also be boiled. No one will be serious with Trump's primates yet, and I'm galoshing my own in the Oval Office. And no one will be J. Divens' serious primates, because you can still swim seriously, of course. That J. Divens is also the most dilettante and populist I am Fitkov Kushner before the speech. You understand that J. Divens, having tried to become a curator of the process of the Russian-Ukrainian soap. After all, the turns are tight. The Minister of the Army sent Dan, and one of the closest associates of the Vice President to Kiev. And I tilky, and beat up the wrong way and buckets, and spat on the whole spravu. And no longer looking for a serious post there. I believe that they are all perfectly natural. Kola meets reality. Pressed in the White House with reality does not happen often. I would like to have a good torture in PPR. And for some reason, the Russians say that they will think about Trump's plan. And the Russians are rubles, then we are still numb, so that Trump, for the rights to sanctions against the Russian Federation, still continued to exchange intelligence information with the dumped forces of Ukraine, so that he laundered from year to year from the money received in the state to the waste, so that the received states would help us. And Russia did not go numb to the tender. Now the United States has not imposed sanctions against the Russian Federation, so that I would have less of the dropped forces of Ukraine to it. And adoring, as for a serious confrontation with Trump, it can hold up to sanctions. So ours are overgrown with them. Engage in confrontation on things they say at a time that Trump has propane plans. I don't think to them that he will call the enemies and the Europeans. I do not know that you are responsible for the head pile of Moscow with the receipt of the state. Anyone who does not have such anti-Americanism is afraid that Grandpa Donald needs demons. The head gate of Russia in the UK. In the UK, I'm just a menstrual organism. Russia. I need to develop it now. The UK has headhawks, the snicks of war. Everyone and Namagayatsia and unhappy Russia. Everyone is going to grow Ukraine, for which rush to Britain in the Russian ideological discourse caught. And just a little dog with received in the state. Americans seem sharp to her and just to him. This was the acceptance of, say, Prime Minister Tony Blair in Britain, who was a participant in American peacekeeping missions, and vi. And the Prime Minister in Britain, Keir Starmer, has his order at the Posad workshop. On the landing. Say, well, there's absolutely Boris Johnson, and it's about Russian propaganda. And C is bound by the fact that in Russia, that is, a truly respectful Great Britain, playing the leading role of light policy. Not. C is also tied to the fact that Russians need the image of a heap once, Ukrainians and his image to pull. It's just that the anti-Russian province just needs to be right back in the past. There can't be a head God Vzglia can't fight, and a brave Russian soldier. Not. British hands. And what about the British, and the fact that the Americans cannot at once be the head gate of what is not punished by barking and Trump? And it's so idiotic. And idiocy comes out of the Russian president's relatives, Yuri Ushakov, to say that Trump's plan. And ready to sleep away proddy for the Americans on the topic of the gentry. Although no one allegedly showed the plan to the Russians. That's the problem. So in this regard, it can be clearly said that the Russians are simply engaged in diplomatic maneuvers. And I will continue with this rank, and the Americans can be seen in the sanctions of the pro-Russian Federation. And it is visible to help Ukraine. And the plan itself, where you all point of view, I'm already on a one-time all-belt plan you all tilky that Kirill Dmitriev Putin, Vladislav to Washington. That Protea is for the rights of sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil, and about these sanctions, by selling to Plan C. You will still float in sight of Trump, and there will be more sanctions deposits. And Vitkov, Namaga, all the Vitas and plans of the Dokonal. Radu and the mayor. The heat is so gone. Here are the channels to the Rada and the mayor. In order to show Trump as well, I have also solved the Russian-Ukrainian problems. And I would say scams and peoples are all a document. I didn't choose to show anyone. And for such Americans, I would not have known anything else with him. And with the year, the goal of the Dmitriev document is to take the evil journalist Max. An intensive process. Massacres. Trump today decided to talk about the closure of the Russian-Ukrainian guilt and Xi Jinping. Ratsmova was not revealed in Dal. Xi Jinping became famous for the fact that Russians and Ukrainians. I'm bees well, the process of saying Chinese is submitted to the United Nations. And clearly saying that the type before filing the causes of the conflict. Then, who is the head of the People's Republic of China, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Ukraine, sent everything as Putin says. And with such a rank, showing complete synchronicity and identity, look in Moscow and left for ya. Because of the reasons for the conflict of sovereignty of Ukraine. The reason for the conflict is the sovereignty of Ukraine from the point of view of Russia. Ukraine in Zagolina and again on the political map, the retinue is absolutely going to the peace power. Violence is needed. From the point of view of China, Ukraine can again and the Western Belarus. I am politically a province of the Russian Federation. I will be turned off to Moscow and Beijing. And Xi Jinping himself will look like an oid Russian Limitrov on the political map of the retinue. And in the case of Trump and Xi Jinping, there was another important detail if you do not give up carelessly. Then we will also say in official conversations with the Xinhua agent about the sweep of the head of the People's Republic of China. With the American president. Not one word about what Xi Jinping is about Russian-Ukrainian guilt, but a clear statement about the fact that from Taiwan to China, my status is the 100th of the New World Order. What is actually a pin reading, saying on the injection to develop bags between Russia and China, and with the receipt of the state and my Russia turned to Ukraine and Taiwan. That's the whole logic of the head of the People's Republic of China. So give him Donald Trump. And she was and Plidno Razmove. The summit? I'm all Luandi's action sounds great. The European Union for Ukraine. Well, what's the point in Luanda? To the fact that in the capital of Angola, I was just scheduled to have an oyster on the Riviera of the European Union Africa. On traditional such oysters as part of the piracy of Europeans with a smaller continent. And it also revealed the cleavage of Trump's plan, and publicly between the American and Ukrainian. And you are offering at the Institute of the European Union. It was necessary for the European leader to take the lead even before they gave it. And you can also understand there was one tie, and those who were in Luanda, and those who, in principle, spoke clearly about being away from Ukraine and sovereignty. Positively characterized the process by removing the torture about the fact that the Americans would be stamped on Ukraine and sown, and actually accepted the capitulation before Russia. Well, and I didn't have any special comments between the European Union and the Yak didn't send Viktor Orban's drive to what is obviously the American plan. The American plan can change so that from the point of view of the interests of the President of the Russian Federation. Well, the problems for why are overgrown, that they are simply turned off for regional negotiations and not discussions. Let's say in Grudny, Finland will look like a Revka stand in Ukraine, the so-called Shid part of the European Union. Persia so and also in this format. And then they literally kill everyone. Crusts in beer halls, in the Baltic, in the Ukraine of Central Europe. Will everyone be there? So they could. Orem the Prime Minister, and the cleaning President, the Prime Minister and the President are elephants. Obviously, Central Europe simply does not have them. That's why they are not respected by people. It is possible to negotiate, and Maybutnya, Skidno European frequent on the European Union. And we do not give up, that this is a serious foreign policy corruption of two populists, Viktor Orban and Robert Fitz. And yet, this is such a marginal story about Yaku Varda, they had to worry and think about it. And they allegedly poured the repairs into them, it is visible to pour in their positions in the European Union. So is the European Union summit on Ukraine in Angola, putting on me a decisive factor. I have demonstrated readiness. Europeans, we have it in the minds of Americans can date for. We know more of the same in Geneva. The Europeans are talking among themselves. Yakim ranks them to replace intelligence information received in the state. Once again, Donald Trump has a fit of blackmailing information. And I think that's an unacceptable signal for Americans. The fact that the Europeans will start to demonstrate that you can't kill Americans with your help from Ukraine. The same you tortured. And for something, Donald Trump needs Putin. And Ukrainians are also fighting. Europeans are being beaten, pennies are being beaten, they have been scouting information. Sanctions are lifted, it is not possible for him. Of course, if Americans become Europeans, then the miscalculation with Donald Trump cannot float in it, and not to Ukraine. And not to Europe. And I don't think that the Americans have their own foreign policy rivnya, which would punish them there as well. Well, you are still overgrown. They are going to get serious discussions on the plan with American politicians and still on the cob. All of it on secretly sued. In Congress, he says that there was not enough of him, that the Americans and Ukrainians would not want to infect with a miscalculation and are being added. And he began to say that the plan could be voted by Congress. And Senator Lindsey Graham. I am led by one of the lobbyists of such a sanctions offensive in Russia and the Allies. Ledges with this idea. You don't give up, that filthy is not a filthy moment. Zagoli? The SAY plan basically turns stats into an honest problem for us. Let's leave an honest problem for Donald Trump and for the GOP company. I actually submitted Trump's documents as well. The fact that, of course, well, you can't be right now, politicians are amateurs. As a sign. And you are fine, of course, I will also filter, and on the was on Tilke, with the resulting staffentism, of course, even so. And the sovereign interestentism of the mind. Then the victims cut out the aggressortism, cut out this ideological torture and torture of an existential nature. Is turned off pennies. So not everything for pennies can be cuptism, of course. What in Ukraine is a necessary order of national gatherings of national patuku. And what hundreds of such a order actually directly from the pasties on the times of Ukraine and on it. In the central center and carelessly. On the side of Russia, we are the Teshbakim board. Everyone is used to talking about Putin, and there is a genius of a political maneuver. The thorn is full of gibberish. Putin can also tilke to the fact that my right is with an amateur. Well, being a scared tactician from the point of view of his Chekist training for clay, Nikola has no idea what about Ukraine. Peoples and interest. Putin, on the other hand, sees Shira about Durzdep's financing of the Maiden here about all this stuff. As Russian propagandists in our dis and in Putin's head are still in this. Blame the CIA for the FSB and Lavrov. And it also helped the Ukrainians in this sovereignty. The Kiev region of the Russian Federation would have been a long time ago. And the visible illumination in the end, that it was necessary to read books. Putin bought loot from a Liz in St. Petersburg. Of course. This is a serious story. His entourage and his biography. And Kola told him to read books and read their idiots like Ilyan. And he put on the fact that he wrote what was in the corridors of the Leningrad Committee of the Sovereign Union. Just on good ground, it came chauvinistically with Mitya's lining and read it. I've read it yet. So the topic has a problem. That the profession is replaced by adoration, and an absolutely real retinue. I have become a living Russian political root, and an American one in a real retinue. And we have, I would say, our own prominent read reality. And this is actually the whole story with the idiotic plan has already gone down. It is possible to vaccinate our Ukraine, and Ukraine with it. So it is. From all the same to the result that we are pumping, I will ask those who are subscribed to the channel with heirs to subscribe to it. You know that we demo millions on the channel, and have already completed approximately 19,000 to a million, so be 19,000. I will be there for you 19,000 pretending to be a million. Behind your building. Put it like that. Comments on what else you think about. Trump is still the best hour with, and there will be results all from the oyster. And I'm singing to the torture of the fact that the drinking has come to the ether now. Panda Vitaly, what for a moment, that he was given a cob. These are the values. But we are not giving up yet the president of the power. I and respecting my power to sign, and the surrender program for another. My prices are significant from a political point of view. And I will find, of course, and in what you yourself, and the expression that you respect the plan will be signed. Then Putin, upon accepting it, will look like they will be signed. What time is it? For a certain value from the point of view of the hour. The Ukrainian needs not to have any points in American propositions and belittle Ukrainian sovereignty. The fact that we will still have Ukrainian sovereignty, no one will help us. There is no chance that the Russians will be with something like this. Well, it's just that he said that the American plan befits them again, and will say that Ukrainians are Europeans. They are like a POB. On the topic of the whole history of Zakyn, does not tie these plans with the Zakonchi of guilt. I will repeat to you for the 155th time. It's not me who came up with the idea for ending the Russian-Ukrainian war in the long run. But they are not Maya. Well, it's just that they can't be taken out at the moment. I still have the economical demographic potential of the Russian Federation. Not to allow them to continue this guilt. And I do not know, no one came up with food. I'm not rushing with the forecast. This is now gone, that they are not economics in the 35th lesson, but in the 25th. And maybe not. Economy. Tell me, the setup of Mr. Vitaly, and my plan may be the Russians. Not the Russians have no alleged adoration for the prospect of putting the blame against Ukraine. Do you think that the Ukrainians will freeze, that they will be put on Kalina, and the direct capitulation on those mines will be dictated by the President of the Russian Federation? Ukrainians are kicked out, and often on an unrealistic plan. The Russian Federation does not economically plan them. Guilt, and as a result of the Russian Federation, and you are beaten. In perspective. So let's fight for the fact that the Americans, the Europeans are the strongest on Russia. The Russian economy has still been thinking. Even in the Russian fathers did not know what about their children. It seemed to you that it was overstated on the president's landing until the end of the fault. But our character's time is programmed for her to be shoved on the legitimate president of Ukraine. And not the supposedly legitimate president of Ukraine, not like food on Ludin. I am in the icon of the president on the ambushes of the people's mandate. Think of you as the president of Ukraine, and before the elections forever, maybe without the knowledge of discounts. I didn't invent the completion of guilt. So it will be. I still have the political elite of Ukraine, the Ukrainian Dazri understanding of a number of national identity. This absolutely does not mean an insertion, it means really into an icon within the framework of the Ukrainian constitution. But into an icon within it within the framework of the constitution. What's the problem here? A certain problem here is not on the landing of the president of Ukraine. Not not swimming into such a situation. Otherwise, I want to torture. Here are those who say that this is why I bet. I'm still overstating the president's seat in the Ukrainian constitution. The icon wallpaper of the President of Ukraine before the presidential election. The head of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Thickets Ruslan Stefanchik. Submitted to the Servant of the People Party. I'm obviously in the Verkhovna Rada. So you decided Ukrainians. And Jacob was given the mats, what is not like in the parliamentary elections, in a tender perspective. What is not like for the final war. Java has that the Verkhovna Rada, that the brother and the speaker of the represented parties are servants of the people. Politically exiled. This means betting on you and torture. The president's prick will be the very party servant of the people leader, you gain something. Not like the chances of the Lord to Zakonchenoi guilt. Forget it. There will be a single chance that I am already a goat until the national unity and the readiness of the ruling party to share respect with the Isham and democratic forces. And all the same, hear it out loud. So cut into the Ukrainian people. It is not hard for him to finish his guilt, and so maybe he was not beaten by the heirs. And after all, people have seen a power share for their decisions. That's right, fair. Everything is unfair. You have disappeared the values from the received states by trying to regulate the guilt on the intelligence. I want to take out for the souls on the damn Zagoli need America. This is good nutrition. And I'll catch you saying that it's not that simple. With the receipt of the state, we are given Tilky to scout. With getting the states richly, what ruble in terms of crime you have. Let's say our facilities are infrastructural. The Patriot system is protected. But VIP Patriots can't, and we need to, not without a year with the received in the state. All the Patriots, I stand on our defense, and serve for the American details of the American all this and more. We have Heimers. For these, ammunition is needed, that we will not have their ammunition. I will not have them and missiles for Patriot. Then we will simply cease to have such a rank. I am now going to cut out the received states, that Starling did not push us out loud, and there will be such a decision on how I will tie up. Then for the company of Elon Musk. We will get ourselves a soupy lime, and the army of Ukraine. Absolutely out of the question. The British don't give us the Storm Shadow missiles, and allegedly, of course, the Americans are trying to get the Americans. To what the Americans are up to. But not if you are children. I'm still with the received states for a door on cola, and it doesn't help us directly sell their dump to Europeans. Our temple potential may be weakened to a serious tilka for a rakunek of intelligence information. Oh, the Europeans do not love squabbles with the received states. For Europeans with the received states, this is the guarantor of their power, and they are harassed even when hiring. Not up to the installation of the power of the temple industry and the army in European Ukraine. With Euro-Atlantic solidarity to the fact that the Europeans will crumple and strengthen the evil nuclear attempt with participation. Russian Federation. We can also mark who we are fighting with, they know who it is with. Yesterday it turned out that all normal people live listening to the mayor, what he believes, they believe. And it seemed that prices were maturing and realistic. Really, what is one tez about? It's normal to go to the mayor and believe in the world. But too mature, to be realistic. Well, I didn't understand something else. It's an instinct. It's just that maybe everything in advance of reason, with this cold mind, will also take away a share of wine. And the most such people, of course, that their share is not the fault, and we are vexing at the moment the speech. And survive in a richly endless hopeless from the point of view of finished guilt. So what can I say about discounts? I'll just tell you, I'm up to the mayor and ready to believe in the information, and believe me, it's important with Ukrainians. Oh. Hi, signing ahead of time. It ended, of course, and I didn't read what I didn't want to sign, I read. And it's not clear to a friend that Putin doesn't show off anything anyway. Nothing happened. When hiring at this stage. Why Russians posted to walk to youth in Alaska to pass, there were no greedy official comments. Discrediting Trump, but extremely and blaspheming. But you've been fishing in Alaska for imperious eyes. Out and out they went, and Trump said that it was not Maya, not like there were no houses and houses to offend the delegation. Putin gave a historical lecture, and I'm writing a tesh without saying about the houses. So, Trump is Trump downwind, literally, and I began to say some successful Smith, not me. Well, by ear, I'm not deceiving you. I'm lying, I'm not Putin. Could you, Vitaly, forecast the situation for 2 crocs in prairie? The Americans of Petra and the Russians of Chihady had enough to find propositions. And then there's the wine. Wine. The Russians will accumulate and dump Ukrainian energy. Ukrainians will accumulate and send Russian for auto repair, even everyday life on Russian energy. The Americans will be for the rights of sanctions against Russia, the fact that Trump is transformed into Putin. So that for not accepting the plans of the gatherings. Kirill Dmitriev, I will be using Steve Witkov's ropes in Washington to make sure that Putin has a good new peace plan. And at what stage we can go through Pivro and I will go out forever. That's it for you. It has continued, and it can continue like this. And I will repeat once again, I am allowed sanctions by ear. Even those sanctions I have overgrown for the rights of Trump, maybe disappeared for the rights. And so the Russian Federation will be given on the economic potential. Putin will really want not to be on fire. Putin will not need not bright Trump. Russians and Ukrainians are not on fire themselves. Of course, what is Trump's plan itself? And not sensu. And what the Europeans are right about. Pachina and Trebo. Both Putin and his propagandists did not say something, so that they would not benefit from all the Dempins. With the prip on him in the fire, and not from the elimination of the causes of the conflict. Guilt ends like this. With the cob, you lift it into the fire. Dolly does not want to fight and people. And the sweat at the table is diluted to pass the cause of the conflict. It doesn't happen otherwise. Well, it doesn't happen. Supposedly you think there will still be Russia in the plan, yak PVD's Trump, but there will be an explosion in the fallow round. Ukrainians did not stick out realistic ones for NATO. The Russians did not capture the American-Ukrainian primates. I will be for the Russians, I will not believe in it. That's it. And why did you sign and please about minerals? This is no longer relevant. To please about minerals signed, and have already forgotten about not. Then Trump, who respected us with such a rank of pog. And Zuzumila on the ground, there is still no one knows what is in those Ukrainian nadras. It's a bluff. The benefit is in that very person, and the idea of 500 juice sanctions against the holder trades in Russia. With a real article it's Trump, real from Trump's point of view. Well, the idea of the mineral is known, and they can be exploited in the occupied territories. There. Here. For us, so that Trump is numb, and Trump is really on the fact that it is not clear that there is nothing here. And the fact that those who respected him to help Ukraine are pennies, and then he needs to deceive his base. The yak base is so different. In May, he asks for reports from him if you help Ukraine, then do not help. What are you doing there? But I'm giving them billions of something. I'm just giving them hundreds of billions, trillions. And I will not need to pay him to Ukraine. Buckets are the process of the cob itself, and not enough, of course. There was hysteria. Oh, not so in the Oval Office. Trump was upset. Please about minerals, but signed. No one marks on Trump, and that you will test him, but he does not mark anything about the mineral. Why are you all a horseshoe of status, not the way we think, and also Putin? You're a horseshoe maybe. You are a horseshoe. Putin can walk through the Kremlin. A Ciklina falls on him, another one in the president's turn of Medvedev. And it is written on the red button, and the view of Washington will be heard spoga. Maybe so will you horseshoe. And the rule imply is you are a horseshoe. I'm still serious. There is a pattern in politics. The pattern is very simple. And she is right in the fact that we do not know the economic potential of the Russian Federation. We are guessing at still seriously talking. It is possible in Russia to jump out of the forces, to fight another 10 rocky, and erased from the ground, are not Tilky Ukraine powers. You are the decline of theirs. Can I have it? She will say in a few months that we want a constructive solution. I want you and I to be able to accurately assess the potential of the Russian economy, and, of course, to jump out at their discounts for 6 months, our terms could be easier to talk to. The whole problem with all our discussions is that you and I, of course, will still be fighting in Russia. And we do not know what kind of forces they have. And in the subject, the main problem is that we are with you, and my main problem, because I would know for sure. Then I would clearly tell you, Rick. And if I don't know you, he doesn't know you. No one knows you, then we can torture is not that, the torture is that we, of course, still require the direct eviction of Russia itself. Sanctions, strikes on the automotive industry, strikes on infrastructure facilities. Zanu Russia economically so that it could not in the status. And then seems for the most Russians. Fewer people of the Russian people will end the chance and less can be withdrawn. Well, I think they were tanned the heat. And not so. Let's think about the topic in a straight line. Trump's sanctions about Rosneft and Lukoil are a crock on the right track. Still praising the Congress bill about the second non-sanctions of pro-Russian sponsors, crock the right nap. Even cola with Trump is not just selling pennies for European. To the south, I will dump the American for European groves, and I will dump these groves for pennies myself. Crock the right straight. So give it to me, and you'll go straight to the right one. Yesterday's right straight. Diakuyu. Subscribe to the channel of those who do not subscribe to the airwaves again, I ask you. We also shit with you and the demo on the Million Skin channel. Dear overgrown for me. Put it in a podobake. Comment. The tools of the channel drop from Ukraine, yak I would say. Today drop from a civilized retinue, protect our sovereignty and our Tilky aggression. And to the madness of those who are the aggressor for us.